Greetings everyone. So I stumbled across an article earlier this month that I thought I would read to you because it was rather interesting. It's an article about the Church of England, for those of you who may have some interest in the Church of England. I certainly do. And some of the things that were written in this article were kind of things that and I'm sure many people already were thinking. But despite that, even if you think that, when you say it, when you read it, it still kind of makes you go, oh. Like, it still shocks you a little bit. And that's what happened while I was reading this. So let me just go through this. It's not that long, and you might find it quite interesting as well. So the title of the article is The End of the Church of England, and it's written by Nigel Jones, who is a historian and a journalist. And then underneath the title, it does say, Why I Found Myself a Confirmed Agnostic Defending the Faith. So let's begin. I spent New Year's Eve in the company of a former Anglican vicar who lost his faith and had the honesty to resign from the church as a result. And that's what should be happening. I've never understood why somebody who no longer has the faith would remain in the church. The only reason I can think of for that is that it's a comfortable position. But of course, when somebody does this, they are lying. They are pretending that they believe in the things that they are preaching. And in their mind, what they're preaching isn't true because they've obviously lost the faith. So they are telling a bunch of people to believe in something that they no longer believe. I know if I was a part of any movement and I'd lost belief in that movement, I no longer felt that what that movement stood for was true, I wouldn't continue to be in that movement and convince others to be in this movement and to believe these things if I no longer believe them. So this was at least the honest thing to do. You lost your faith, fair enough. It happens. You know, I can't remember who said this, if it was a priest or if it was Pope Francis or somebody said in the Catholic Church that if your faith doesn't align with your reason, with logic for you, then don't believe. Because the Catholic faith should be aligning with reason. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. They go hand in hand. So if that's not happening, then don't believe. It's a bit of a weird thing for a priest to say. I think it was a priest who said it, or somebody said it. Maybe you'll know that somebody said that if your faith doesn't align with your reason, with your logic, then don't believe, because it should do. And then the next part, he said what I long suspected. Almost none of those in the hierarchy of the church today believe in the central tenets of their faith. The divinity of Christ, the virgin birth, the resurrection of the dead, the miracles of Jesus, the Trinity, heaven and hell, life after death, or even a benevolent God. So it isn't even the case that they no longer believe in very particular aspects of Christianity. They do not even believe in God anymore. They're atheists. And this is not surprising, as I said earlier. It's something that a lot of us feel we already know, but it's still shocking every time you say it, because it shouldn't be that way, obviously. And the vote for same-sex unions to be permitted in the Church of England was a good example of how the hierarchy of the church clearly cannot believe in the tenets of Christianity anymore, because almost all the bishops of the Church of England voted in favour of same-sex blessings. It was like nearly 90%. He continues, In the end, I, an agnostic who tries to keep an open mind about Christianity, found myself arguing with the former clergyman's new faith in atheism. I like the way he says that, faith in atheism, because it is essentially a faith as well, I suppose. It's not knowledge atheism. It's looking at things and deciding that actually you believe there can't be a God because of the way things are. I am not strong enough to ever be an atheist, though I have sometimes been a Catholic bordering on agnosticism. But truth be told, I've never had an issue with a God existing. Like, my reason and my logic have never been at conflict with the belief that there's a God. What they have been at conflict with sometimes is that there's an all-loving, all-powerful God. We're his children and he's our father and he loves us dearly. Because then you just think, well, hold on. Look around you. Look at God's children. Look at the things they're suffering with. Look at how much they pray to him and beg him for help. Look at how he doesn't help them. And that's where, for me, it's a difficult equation to square. This idea that he's loving, he's madly in love with you. I remember a priest saying that. God is madly in love with you. And yet, here's the evidence that seems to show something completely opposite to that. In the world, if somebody treated their children, if a dad treated his children the way that God treats us, his children, people would say, that's an abusive father over there. Whereas with God, it's different rules. It's a different set of rules. Earthly rules don't apply to him. Anyway, that's just my personal thing. I don't want to get too much into that. I pointed out the enormous power of faith, which has continued burning in dark times for 2 millennia. I'm more of a sinner than a saint, and found it slightly odd to be attempting to persuade a theologian that his former faith still has life in its desiccated bones. I live in a cathedral city where the evidence of the once overwhelming place of Christianity in our culture is all around. To be told that the guardians of that faith are today little more than hollowed out hypocrites going through the ritualistic motions is a tad dispiriting. For many years, the dear old Church of England has been but a pale shadow of its former robust self. The faith that inspired its early martyrs, the Cranmers, the Latimers, and the Ridleys, to literally let their flesh burn and shrivel in the flames rather than recant their dearly held beliefs, is gone. Even the dry, abstruse arguments that motivated the 19th century Oxford movement scholars, the Newmans, the Puseys, and the Kebbles, no longer have meaning in a church that prefers to fret over whether gay couples who live together should be permitted to have sex. It may be naive of me, but I've never understood the close connection between smells and bells and homosexuality. The Anglo-Catholic wing of the church seems almost entirely composed of gay clergy, while the evangelical happy-clappy warriors tend to be as conservative in their sexual preferences as they are in their faith. That's something that surprises me, I'll be honest. I would have expected it to be the other way around, that the Anglo-Catholic high church wing would be more conservative and the more happy-clappy, modernistic type of worshippers would be more liberal, and perhaps a lot of them would have homosexual tendencies. But he's not the first person who said that it's actually the evangelical wing of the Anglican Church that's more conservative. And then when you go into some kind of a service in some Anglican cathedral and see the smells and bells and this very high church feel, it's actually the liberals who are doing that, who don't believe in a lot of the church teachings, but they do like the way the service looks and they like taking part in it. Call me a fuddy-duddy reactionary if you wish, but where in his entire ministry did Jesus of Nazareth so much as mention the love that once dared not speak its name, but which in today's church appears to be the sole preoccupation of those ministers whose job is to preach the gospel of Christ? In his poem Churchgoing, Philip Larkin, a skeptic who nonetheless respected the dominating position that the church once held for us, visits an empty church and wonders what will become of it when we not only don't believe but have forgotten what faith itself is all about. He concludes that the ruin will remain a serious place on serious earth, if only because so many dead lie around. In another poem, Albaid, Larkin called religion a vast, moth-eaten musical brocade, created to prevent we never die. The cathedral in my hometown contains the tomb that inspired yet another Larkin poem, an Arundel tomb, with its magnificent closing line. What will survive of us is love. But what really lay behind these poems was not love but fear, terror of the death that Larkin called the sure extinction that we travel to, and fear of the void in which we all move and have our being. The tragedy of our dying church is that when it finally disappears, few will gather round the grave to mourn an institution that has long since abdicated its real role. As it sinks into eternity, who will remember Hugh Latimer's injunction to his fellow martyr Nicholas Ridley? Be of good comfort, Master Ridley, and play the man, for we shall this day light such a flame in England that I trust by God's grace shall never be put out. So there it is. That's the piece there, and it's sad, and it's sometimes like a warning, because what's happened in the Church of England is something that could well happen in the Catholic Church. There are clerics, we also know, in the Catholic Church who are very much trying to change the teachings of the Church. Some of them don't even probably believe in them. I would like to hope it's not the majority of the hierarchy, as this former cleric said about the Church of England, but I wouldn't bet on it, and I certainly wouldn't count on it not heading in that direction. And so, while we can say as Catholics, well, the gates of hell will never penetrate the church, because it was created by Christ, if we have more and more clergy in the Catholic Church who are confusing people and giving them weird, vague, mixed messages, or even sometimes messages that appear to be completely the opposite to what the church teaches, then even if the catechism is correct, even if the church itself never teaches anything heretical, a lot of people might not realize that. They'll go to a priest for some advice, that priest will give them the wrong advice, and then they'll assume that that is what the church teaches, because why would the priest say that to them if it wasn't? So I think the Church of England, certainly as somebody living in England and seeing what's gone on there, is like a really big warning of what could happen if we're not careful. Sure, we know the Catholic Church won't crumble, but it could become unrecognizable on the face of it, even if the teachings will be correct. As I said, if all you do to get advice on what you should be doing is just simply refer to the Catholic Church Catechism, then you'll be fine. But we know that a lot of people generally tend to listen carefully to the sermon of the priest, or go to see a priest if they want to know something that they're unsure of. And that's where things could get twisted and people could get confused if we have the wrong people in the church. As I said at the beginning, it was good that this former clergyman that the author was talking about left the church when he had doubts, when he realized he no longer believed it. That's what should be happening. If that happens, I'm not going to criticize you. If for whatever reason you just found it impossible to believe, something just didn't add up for you and you lost your faith, fine. But then leave that institution that does believe in it and stop confusing more people and sort of doing something, as the author said, in a hollow way, where you're like one of those chocolate bunnies that's got nothing inside it, really. Anyway, folks, what are your thoughts, particularly those of you maybe who are in England, but even outside of England, because I know that in the USA, for instance, there is essentially the Episcopal Church that is the Anglican Church in the USA. What is it like over there? Do they also seem like they do here, where sort of the majority of the hierarchy of the clergy there appear to have lost their faith? Or is it a bit more like the evangelicals here, where actually they are still lit with that faith? Anyway, folks, what did you think of that article? I thought it was quite interesting. And what do you think about the Church of England generally, or the Anglican Church more worldwide? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you very much for watching the video. Have yourselves a blessed day.